here. Okay, so let me set the mood and the setting. We're at the Museum of Chinese in America at MoCA, right here in Chinatown, in New York City, with filmmaker Steve James returning to my podcast. When last we met, it was in a hotel room. Let's just leave it there. We had a nice conversation. And then I'm pleased to also be joined by some of the subjects of the film, the Sung family. And it's okay, Mrs. Sung, she dropped something. It's okay, no problem. And I'll introduce y'all, and then we'll get into it. Chantrelle and Jill and Vera. Yes. Sung, got it. And Father Thomas is around somewhere. He's going to maybe drop in a little while. So we'll start. The name of the film is Abacus, Small Enough to Jail. What Abacus is... Well, let's just get right into it. Since you're holding the mic, Vera, let's start. What is Abacus, by the way?
Abacus is...
I'm playing devil's advocate.
Okay.
Or devil's abacus. Okay.
What is abacus? Abacus, objectively, is an object. It's a calculator. The oldest
right.
computer created, I think. Mm-hmm. Yes. And then subjectively, it was used as a name to name our bank. My father chose it because he felt it represented a certain amount of history and precedent and gravitas to the financial institution that he created, Abacus Bank.
And it's located in Chinatown, in New York.
Yes.
Where it has been for how long?
It's over 30 years in existence. And we have 6 branches. A couple in, two in Chinatown, one in Chinatown, one in Philadelphia, one in Flushing, one in Sunset Park, Brooklyn, and one in Edison, New Jersey.
In Edison, really?
Yes. We're basically, there's a concentration.
Chinese American community there?
Yes.
Okay. My dad's brother lived there for many years. I grew up going to Edison. I didn't. All my childhood.
Oh, you did?
So, for all I know, drove right by it.
Right.
Although I'm assuming they came later in the picture, some of those branches.
Yes, they did. You know. Yeah.
But the point is right, it's been this establishment, this institution serving the Chinese American community for decades.
Yes.
Right?
Over 3 decades, yes.
Right. And then in 2008, we had a bit of a financial meltdown in this country, to say the least, where several financial institutions were clearly playing with our money and potentially breaking a lot of laws, and also needed bailouts, everything, right? And then out of all that and all those major banks that were participating in that, the government went after one bank, or ended up litigating against one bank.
Right.
Is that fair way? It was your bank.
Yes.
Hence the film.
Right.
So, Steve, I know that this was brought to you by your friend Mark here, right? This story.
Friend. I don't know if I'd use the word friend.
Acquaintance?
No. Of course, yes. He's a friend, yes, and a colleague.
So you found out about this story, or he brought it to your attention, and what was it that was so compelling to you? Guys are clearly
I've always liked Chinese food.
Story.
Number
Fair
one. No. What was compelling about it? You said you're going to edit, so.
Me.
Yeah.
So I don't make mistakes, not you.
Okay. What was compelling about it was just hearing initially about, when Mark first talked to me about it, he said, I know this family in New York. I've known them for 10 years. They have this bank. They're the only bank being criminally prosecuted, connected to the 2008 mortgage crisis. And I'm like, what? And they're a small community bank. And he said, I really think they're innocent. And he started to give me some of the details about how they had self-discovered some low-level fraud going on.
In the mortgage department.
In their own mortgage department,
right.
How they'd reported it, how they'd fired the guy, reported it, initiated their own internal investigation and got rid of a few other people. And yet the DA's office decided that the bank was complicit in all of this and decided to put them on trial, and that this was this 5-year ordeal. So Mark told me all this, and I was like, this just sounds insane. And then he said, and Matt Taibbi, in his book, The Divide,
Rolling Stone
wrote about their indictment, because when the book came out, the trial had not happened, but wrote about their indictment in the introduction to his book as a kind of Exhibit A of the unequal application of justice in America. And so he said, you should read that, and he gave me the book. And I read that chapter, and I just said, well, yeah, I see why this is... And, on top of all of that, it was like, and no one's reporting on... I mean, I hadn't heard about it. I read the New York Times with some regularity, and it was like, I didn't know anything about it. So all of that combined said, well, yeah, let's go to New York and film a little bit and see if there's a film to be done here, and clearly there was.
Chantrelle, what? Why do you think Cyrus Vance Jr., right? Wasn't Cyrus Vance Sr. a good guy? Wasn't he a good guy? I remember him. He was like the VP, right? Wasn't he under
Secretary of State.
Oh, he was the Secretary of State under Ford?
Carter.
Or Carter. He's one of the good guys, I thought. Anyway, doesn't mean that he's not. It doesn't mean Cyrus Vance Jr. isn't, but he doesn't get our sympathy in this. I'm wondering why Abacus Bank? Would you? I mean, you guys must have a theory after all that. Sure.
And we're asked that question a lot, as if there's some sort of complicated answer, but I really think it's quite simple. It was basically an example of going after the little guy, but it was all about politics. At that point, there was no other financial institution that had been charged criminally after the financial crisis, and
it was could have been like shooting fish in a barrel, but they went after a very tiny,
and this
tiny
was
fish
this
instead.
was a case that we actually brought to them. Mm-hmm. They had initially, before we even retained an attorney to represent the bank, they had asked my sisters to come in. Well, to provide documents and to come in for interviews to the district attorney's office to explain how the bank operated and so forth. And so, at that point, as Steve had mentioned, an internal investigation by the bank had already been conducted. And my sisters had hired a forensic auditor to conduct that investigation and had provided that evidence to the Manhattan DA's office, thinking that they were going to then do what's right and actually prosecute the bad guys. But instead, it turned into what you now know as this story. So,
and forgive, I'm asking a lot of questions as though I haven't seen the movie or know the story, but a lot of people listening will hopefully see the film, but maybe haven't yet. I have a question, Jill. Well, do you think the government just assumed this was going to be like just a slam dunk?
Yes, I think so. I mean, I don't think they thought that there would be any kind of fight that's put up by us. I think they also thought that being a bank, that we would be a small bank, that we would be nervous and be concerned about our regulatory issues with having this indictment against us. So I think they definitely thought that that would be easy.
Well, we're being joined by the patriarch of the family.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Thomas Sung.
Yes.
And so, Thomas, let me ask you, there's a lot of questions come to mind. One I want to definitely ask you is, what did you think when, maybe it was Mark Mitten, came to you saying, I have this friend named Steve who makes films, and he's interested in, was that kind of how it went?
I think it's Mark, and then Mark introduced Stephen.
Hold the mic a little closer.
To us.
Thank you.
Yes.
What was your first thought about or feeling about a film being made about this story, especially when you had no idea how it was going to turn out?
Well, truthfully, we always felt that we have been unfairly prosecuted. Having a recording of the events, to me, is a good thing. Mm-hmm. So I welcomed the opportunity, in fact.
Steve, did you talk to him about there's going to be an aspect to the film that might get personal, that you're going to be inside their family discussions right in the middle of that, and maybe in their home, and it could get quite intimate, right?
Yeah, I mean, we made it clear that we didn't just want to interview them about the case or check in with them, that we wanted to be around when they were
processing
and dealing with it. I mean, there were boundaries. Jill, despite my persuasive charms, did not allow us to film with her family. Mm-hmm. I kept coming back to that, didn't I? Saying, come on, are you sure? Just a little bit, because we did want to see them apart from the office and the dealing with the trial to some degree. Not a lot, but some degree. But, it's fine that we didn't get that, and we totally respected her reasons for not wanting that. But they were very cooperative and game for us to be there to sort of see this process that they were going through and sort of witness it up close, which is good because that is the heart of this film. We weren't able to be in the courtroom. We tried. We weren't able to get access to the prosecution during the trial. We tried. We weren't even able to get access to the defense team during the trial, and we really tried with that. Sure. So what we were left with, and I put that in quotes, is the family. But you know what? That really was the heart of really understanding what this was about and what it meant was to be with the family. And thankfully, they gave us that access.
What was the defense? What was their biggest concern about somehow participating in the film?
I think you guys should add to this, but my impression from our conversation with them was that they just felt like it was that they worried that any kind of film, even though the film wasn't going to come out until long after this was decided, that it could present some kind of problem with us being there to record it. It could in some ways undermine the confidentiality between client and lawyers. Honestly, I know because there's been a number of films done that have access to parties during the trial that really isn't a real that there's ways to deal with that would never come to pass. But we weren't able to convince them of that, and they're the lawyers, so they decided that they didn't want it.
Well, to the film's credit, it didn't occur to me. Why isn't the defense team speaking up here? Why don't we have them in the?
And I think, and that's good to hear. And I think part of that is because the family is so engaged in this process with each other.
Sure.
That it more than fills any void there'd be there, and it's compelling and it's different. Mm-hmm. It's different. It's different to sort of see a family going through this in the way you see that in the film, whereas typically you see lawyers involved in every aspect of it.
Right. And it makes sense. The bank, even though it's a financial institution, it's a family business. You don't see that too often. And it brings me back to that point. I'm glad it came up because what we see in the film also at the sort of towards the beginning is father and the founder of the bank, Thomas, really involved in the neighborhood. He's really part of the community and really visible. Makes himself personally liable by being visible. I don't mean legally necessarily viable to the problems that may occur, but he's there. He's taking ownership of his business and of his relationships, and it's really refreshing. It's particularly difficult to watch his name being questioned and his name to be dragged through the mud like that. And I can't imagine. I was feeling so much tension and anguish, empathizing with you ladies about what that must be like to see your dad going. And we see it in the film, what you're going through, but I don't know if you can articulate, looking back now a year or two when this was unfolding.
It's hard to believe it's been 2 years already.
Yeah.
Time really flies, but the pain and the anguish that you talk about is very real. Each one of us, as his daughter, we don't want to disappoint him, and we also don't want to see him get hurt in any way, just as he is very protective of us. So in going through this trial, it's very personal in that sense. We knew we were fighting for the community and for the bank, but we also know that we were also trying to fight for something that our father had devoted his entire life, well, not his entire life, but a good part of his life in building. And we definitely want to make sure that legacy survives and continues.
Did you have anything to add to that, Jill?
I think that was good.
Chantrelle, did you have anything to add? Let's hear from Thomas again. Mr. Sung, excuse me. Let's hear from Mr. Sung again. You're a pretty cool character. I don't think I saw you sweat once. I mean, your wife is falling apart. Your daughters are crumbling, and everybody is trying to keep their selves together. But you look very, very together through the whole time. Was there any moment or moments in there where you really just had given up hope?
Well, as I get older, you become more immune to different possible events in life. And of course, this is one of the most difficult ones that we've experienced. particularly when you are almost at the retirement age, actually beyond retirement age.
I think you are beyond.
I'm sorry to say that.
Yeah.
And you have this thing coming at you.
Your wife is gesticulating behind you. Go ahead. I'm sorry to interrupt.
So you had this thing, this indictment come at you, totally in the sense that you cannot anticipate.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
In banking, we anticipate risks. That's part of the banking, bank's responsibility.
Right.
We anticipate various different risks. One of the risks is regulatory risk, but really never anticipated prosecutorial risk.
Mm-hmm.
That's something never experienced before,
mm-hmm.
and it's for good reason. When a financial institution is prosecuted, indicted, that's the beginning and the end, not like a normal criminal case. It's the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
But daughter who did the research will tell you, no bank survived the indictment.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
yes,
wow.
not more than 3 months anyway, right?
Huh.
Yeah.
Yeah, usually the regulator either pulls the plug. Well, most of the times they pull the plug.
They take away the
charter
guarantee in the charter. Okay.
Yeah,
and then
they work. It's almost like a pre-arranged.
I see.
Between the regulator and the and the bank.
Right.
So yeah, my father's correct. This was completely unprecedented, and but we felt that my father was talking about risk, and I'm nodding my head vigorously because that's all I do my whole day. Is in my job as the bank president is I have to constantly assess risk
management.
Yeah, and but when we looked at the risk of going to trial versus the risk of taking a plea that was completely untrue, we felt that the risk to the institution was much greater, actually was fatal, if we took the plea. And we felt that going to trial, because of us being lawyers and having some faith in the system, would be able to prove ourselves, was actually a risk that we should take and that was important to take.
Did you want to add to that, Thomas? Good.
Yeah, I just want to finish the thoughts. So, yes, this risk or prosecutorial risk, it was never anticipated. We know it's a horrendous risk. It's a life and death risk to be indicted. But there was no choice. They want you to either go through the trial. They really don't want you to go through trial. They just want you to die.
Mm.
But we felt that we had to move on and defend the case. So there, in that respect, they took the risk away from you because there's no choice for us. We had to fight. But to answer your question, how is that we feel so calm about it in approaching the thing here?
No, I just asked how you did.
Yes. that may appear to be so, but really we went through a lot of emotional up and down, a lot of agony because after the indictment, there were successive other prosecutory actions taken by Vance, such as freezing the bank's asset, as if the bank was a ordinary criminal that would have a flight risk, taking the property and abscond, and but that's hardly is the case with a federally insured institution. So we know we were on the right, but yet again we have to constantly think about what would we do if the action was brought by the DA to freeze our asset. Should we allow him to freeze our assets or a portion of our assets, or should we fight it? If we fight it, are we correct as fiduciary of the bank in taking that risk? All of these things constantly go through our mind and Jill and Vera's mind and so forth, because they clearly was wrong in exerting that power to freeze a federally insured institution. And we were almost ready to give them a small amount of money. To us, it's big money.
Sure.
To them, it's a small amount of money, such as what, $2 million? Something like that. They want $6 million to free, but they want to put in their own account, not in the escrow account. Isn't this, you laugh? This is honest truth.
That's amazing.
Yeah, we said that.
No go.
We said no go.
No way.
If you lose,
yeah.
If we win the case, how are we going to come to ask you to give us the money back?
Right.
So our regulator sort of to back up us up a little bit on this point, I believe. But anyway, they gave up on exerting that.
Thank goodness.
That risk.
Anyway, I know that we have to wind down. So I just want to thank the Sung family for being so open and sharing their story here, and to Steve James for telling the story so sensitively and dramatically. I mean, it's the film, which again is called Abacus, the subtitle of which is Small Enough to Jail, and it's going to be having its theatrical later this week, Friday, the 19th, at the IFC Center in New York City and at the landmark Nuart in Los Angeles.
Well, it's going to be other places.
It's going to be dozens of other places with the Steve James moniker. Plus Motto Pictures, my old camp friend Julie Goldman. You've got Motto Pictures. You've got our friends at Kartemquin Films behind the film.
Yeah.
So it's quite a
lot of powerful people behind this.
A lot of pedigree. Everybody but do you think
everybody but Cyrus Vance Jr.
Do you think he's going to be coming to see the film? I think he will.
I hope he brings a big group of people from the DA's office. There's a lot of ADAs over there, right, Chantrelle?
Well, I know, Steve, you got to run, so thank you very much. It's good to see you again. And
thank you, Adam.
Thank you.
Thank you all. It was a real pleasure and honor to meet everybody here. Thank you very much. And thank you to the Museum of Chinese in America. Thank you very much.